How's it going? Welcome to Sunny Sheets. I'm Carson. I'm back with another book chat. Today, we're going to be chatting about Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. This is a standalone fantasy grimdark novel that is a kind of a Western good versus evil tale. It's the tale about the forces of heaven versus the forces of hell. And it features a trio cast. You've got a disgraced knight, you've got a drunken, guilt-filled priest, and you have a young woman who is orphaned by the Black Plague. So the whole plot of this book revolves around God becoming distant with the affairs of man, and the forces of hell start to take notice. And they want to test to see if God is really truly dormant and asleep. So they enact a huge plague. I mean, it's essentially like the Black Plague, the bubonic plague, I believe in the 1400s. So the forces of hell completely plague the lands to see if God is truly asleep and truly vacant. And if he is, then the forces of hell will try to conquer heaven. So yeah, the driving force of this book is the young woman. She kind of is spoken to by angels and is guided on some vague purpose that she's not aware of why, but she's basically just being commanded by angelic forces. And so she's kind of listening to them and doing what they recommend and what they're kind of whispering to her. So one thing that I loved, and sometimes I didn't like, was the prose and like the writing. There is some awesome writing in here, whether it's just kind of the biblical monologues you get at the beginning of every part. All of 5 of those were epic as hell. They were super cool. But sometimes in certain parts of the book, the prose felt kind of short and choppy. And you would think that like shorter writing is easier to read, but sometimes it felt a little jarring. So the writing didn't always flow well for me, but these 5 religious monologues were awesome. They kind of give you more of the religious stage of like what's happening. And just to give you an example, they're talking about the very beginning when Lucifer was sent to hell, and they say, the angels of God, whose generals were Uriel and Gabriel and Michael, who had broken the back of Lucifer and sent him into the hot coals in the belly of the earth to blacken his face with soot and to know that he was lower than the Lord. That's badass. Man, there is some really cool writing in this book. And that's the only one I'll share in the non-spoiler section because that's like on page 2. But yeah, like I mentioned, there is some awesome writing, and then there are certain parts where the prose felt a little choppy, a little awkward to read, but not really a huge deal, but just something I wanted to point out. In the spoiler section, I can get more in depth with this. I don't want to spoil anything, but grimdark is very appropriate. There is some really messed up imagery in this book. Easily the most messed up scene I've ever read in a book came from here. And if you're looking for something unnerving and something that'll make you feel uncomfortable, you should definitely check this out. Like, there is some real uncomfortable imagery in this book. But I mean, it's grimdark. I mean, that's kind of the point. So yeah, that was very well done. I think one thing about the book that I wasn't the biggest fan of is I thought there was going to be more epic fights. I mean, there definitely is lots of moments of tension, but there wasn't as much, or it was missing a little bit of the epic fights from the main cast that I was hoping for. And I'm a newer reader. I'm still trying to decide or trying to navigate if that's a book substance issue or just an expectations issue. I mean, I understand this is grimdark, so grimdark is generally, I feel like, can be at times, or is like hope deprived. And you're not always going to get these epic battles of overcoming. I mean, sometimes there's just going to be tragedy and failure, but I don't know. I just wanted some more epic action, a little bit more. I walked away from the book just feeling like I missed something, like something was missing for me to really consider this like a perfect book. There is one epic fight kind of earlier on in the book, and that fight was what I wanted more of, but that really only happens once. So overall, this book had some highs, it had some peaks, but it had some elements that left me yearning for a little bit more, and at times the writing was a little choppy for me and stuff. So all of those things considered, I gave Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman a 7.5 out of 10. One thing I did like about the book is that even though that it's grimdark, there was kind of redemptions all around for the trio. The disgraced, sinful, drunken priest dies by sacrificing himself for Delphine, and Delphine, at the end, I mean, this is spoiler section, Delphine is like essentially God, or like Jesus, like the human incarnate of God. So, I mean, and they didn't know this at the time. They had an inkling. But there was a point, I think about 2/3 through the book, the priest basically holds Delphine above his head while he is being stung by these like demonic jellyfish monsters in the water. And he dies. He's killed. And he died saving, I mean, essentially like Jesus Christ. So he had a really nice, courageous, valorous, and I mean, he saved Jesus. I mean, that is like, what better could a priest do than saving the life of the human reincarnation of God? So he got a really nice redemption, a really nice, courageous death. And then Thomas was really interesting because Thomas was an excommunicated knight who was dishonored and had his land stolen. And ever since that battle of, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Cressy? Essentially, the battle where Thomas lost his fight, he lost all of his land, he lost his wife. Ever since that moment, he was fueled with revenge, fueled with rage, even at his wife. Which you can't really blame his wife for what happened, but he was just pissed and he was filled with anger. He really wanted revenge. He wanted to murder the people that caused him this. And there's a certain point in the book whenever Delphine split away from him that he's by himself. He runs into a town, and long story short, they basically reunite him, they reinstate his honor, and they give him this oath, or this honor to uphold, that if he ever finds Englishmen that he'd butcher them. And you might think that that's the redemption, that like, oh, he's reunited and he can get his knightly honor back. Because right after that scene, I think he ends up encountering a group of Englishmen, and I think, and they're in a bathhouse and they're like completely off guard, like they're just lounging and chilling. And Thomas pulls up with his great sword. He's about to butcher all of the men that he was sworn to kill, and then he gets this sort of biblical voice in his head that's saying, "Don't do it, don't." And he doesn't. He walks away, and I think Thomas notes in his head, like, how ironic it was that he just got reinstated with his knightly honor, but decided not to kill the Englishmen. And I think the point of that was to show that his ultimate redemption had nothing to do with these like knightly honors, had nothing to do with his service as being a knight, but more about his forgiveness and his servitude to God. And his ultimate redemption is at the very end of the book when everything's done. He ends up seeing his wife again and basically shows forgiveness and acknowledges that what she did, which was basically being complacent and sleeping with this other person who owned Thomas's castle, she really did it for the sake of ensuring their son's safety. If she were to try to like push this guy out of the castle and try to fight this man, like it would not have gone well. And he acknowledges this and basically forgives her, and that's his ultimate redemption of the book, is forgiveness and pushing away the anger and the rage that he held in his heart. And then Delphine, she doesn't really need any like redemption. She wasn't a sinful person, but she's just, I mean, she's human reincarnated God. So she stopped the forces of hell in the final battle. So that pretty clearly, like, you know, that was her purpose, was to be the human reincarnation of God and stop the forces of hell from destroying the landscape. That one was a bit obvious, so. In the spoiler-free section, I mentioned how I was yearning for a bit more epic combat. And it's in the town where they meet the priest is they fight this big snake, this big like demonic snake creature. And that was a tense fight with him being dragged under the water, and the imagery set up before where they're seeing piles of the snake shit with like bones and clothes and stuff in it. Like, it's super disgusting. Like, the atmosphere is unnerving, and that fight was tense. And he catches the plague and all of this black goo that the snake has poured into him. Like, it was crazy. I mean, you get lots of unnerving imagery. The most messed up scene I've ever read in a book was the corrupted stone statue of the Virgin Mary holding a plagued infant corpse and throwing it at Thomas. Like, that was crazy. But that was more of a fight for them running for their lives. They kind of chip away at the statue, and I think they poked the holy spear at the statue, and it goes away. They encounter a town that was mobbing, and and then at one point they're on a river and they encounter these like jelly monsters, and that's more of them trying to escape and getting onto flat land, and that was intense, but they're more just running away. And even the final fight, I mean, Thomas wasn't able to do too much. He kind of was caught up, and he tried attacking the sort of the big demon that appears in Avignon, and his arm gets ripped off, and he's basically killed and then brought back to life. And I don't know, I just couldn't help but feel a little bit disappointed with the climactic fight, and I was hoping for at least another big fight sequence like the snake fight in the beginning. So I think some of the action was a little bit disappointing for me personally. And lastly, I will end this on kind of an open-ended question that I was thinking about. So the whole catalyst for this entire story, the entire book, comes from the first sentence, the very first sentence of the book, where it says, "Now in these days, the Lord God had turned his face from the business of men." That's kind of the beginning of, well, it is literally the first sentence, but that is the setup for the whole book, is that God has withdrawn from men and is distant and is kind of choosing to not be very involved with men. Why? Like, I wonder if there was some kind of point to be made, if there was some kind of reasoning for why God, particularly at this moment in this universe's time, like, why was God withdrawn? Was he not satisfied with men, or was there already an ongoing battle and he purposely did this as like a feint to the hellish forces so that he could reincarnate as a human and kind of hide amongst humans in Delphine and then eventually come out in the climactic fight? Or maybe I'm just completely overthinking it and it was just a way to get the story started. I'm not really sure. I think I'm leaning more towards the strategic purpose of being withdrawn so that the hellish forces would start making more of an appearance, and then God could hide within just a human and then appear like Delphine does in the very final fight. So I don't know, I might be overthinking that a little bit, but that was something I wasn't quite sure of. Maybe it was literally answered for me and I just didn't pay attention, or I wasn't reading like close enough, but I don't know. If you got all the way to the outro, thanks for hanging with me. We're gonna continue with our ritual of reading a book excerpt for our outro. And this one's actually perfect because this one comes from a horror book, which is very on par with the vibe of Between Two Fires. It's talking about a merry-go-round. It's horses, goats, antelopes, zebras, speared through their spines with brass javelins, hung contorted as in death rictus, asking mercy with their fright-colored eyes, seeking revenge with their panic-colored teeth. From Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Thanks for hanging with me.